I heat up really fast, so my strategy is always keep layers. Putting a hood up is a layer. Having gloves is a layer. I've taken my gloves off. I have a thinner pair of gloves if I need it. And you can see traffic. I'm on the University Bridge, so I'm gonna cross over into downtown, and then I'm going to hit the Elliott Bay Trail on my way back home. So there's probably, I don't know how many miles that's gonna be. But we'll see by the end of the journey. We'll see how many miles. I think it's like 10 miles or something. All right, my lovers, trying to make more videos as much as I can. I have to fit it into my schedule. So let's talk about my recent building back my stamina, because I've definitely lost some stamina within the last few months. You've noticed that if you follow me at all, that there's been a gap between my making videos. And if you don't know anything about that, well, welcome to the channel. Thanks for watching. I like to talk about bike dorkiness. I like to just talk about things while I'm on my bike. I'm definitely someone who rides a bike and thinks about cycling as I ride. So this is the kind of channel where I try to talk about like the bike parts and bike builds and just general psychology of riding and things like that. And so what we're talking about now is building back your stamina. I live in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle area to be specific. And so sometimes in the winter, it can be really hard to get outside of the house. And it's kind of one of those things where I come from Southern California, and so it was always warm. So the weather was very rarely a barrier to going outside. But in the Pacific Northwest, it gets dark early in the winter. We're starting to get towards March, so it's starting to lighten up a little bit. And so it's been hard because other things have gone on in my life which have discouraged me from riding. Mainly things in my professional life. I'm a music teacher, so I'm currently lost one of my biggest clients. They decided to go with an internal music teacher. So, I lost a significant, like up to 80-90% of my income, which is super stressful. But, I run a business. So, the goal is to just get more clients. And over time, like I am confident that I will. But between now and that time when I feel like I have enough clients to sustain myself, it's a worrying time. And I think that worry has made me not want to ride my bikes, and which is sad because it's one of the few things that bring me joy, is getting outside and really riding on my bikes. I'm starting to learn. This video is going to get a little personal, so if that's not something that you're into, then no worries, you can click off, but it is. A lot of things about my life. So I was a chronic cannabis user, and not that I necessarily have a problem with that, or I felt that I had a problem with that, but I was definitely using it to deal with stress, things that I felt like were beyond my control. But because of my recent losing of a lot of my income, it has just forced me to in general, just kind of for the financial reasons, partly I stopped, but then also I was taking bigger breaks in between using. And if you have used at all or used regularly, you can kind of know one of the symptoms of irregular cannabis use is paranoia, and just getting like super overly scared of like the future and your mortality, and just things that I was like didn't want to be overly concerned with. So I would take bigger gaps in between using. And then what would happen is every time I used, I would get that old school anxiety when you first start smoking. And a reason that a lot of people don't use cannabis regularly is because it gives them that anxiety and that kind of paranoia. And I was getting pinoid, I was like, I have a kid now, and I just think about, oh no, one day I won't be here for my kid and things like that. And it was just like it was kind of crippling, like the fear that it would induce in me. And so even though I like using it, I like puffing a little bit and riding. I do enjoy that. I just ended up stopping. It wasn't like I said, oh, I need to quit. But I just ended up stopping, and because of the feelings it was giving me, I was just like, look, it's just not really doing me any favors right now. And then over time, I'll have moments where I'm like, oh, I want to just take a little puff and get on my bike. But I've just kind of been forcing myself not to do that. And, when I first moved to Seattle from Los Angeles, I did the same thing. I was like, let me just not force myself not to use it and see what my life is like, see how I'm able to function and move and do things in my life. And also, I've struggled with mental health all my life too. So, I don't want to get too into the deal, but I grew up in a not super emotionally supportive household growing up. You could say a neglectful one. And I think that has just affected me. And I think one thing that stopping has made me do is really reevaluate kind of what I'm going through mentally sometimes. It's also made me explore, like, my partner, she works in healthcare, has been studying to work as a lactation consultant, and we're both into mental health, and I will often watch videos and things about just kind of mental health and depression and anxiety and things like that. But then she said to me, her sister recently got diagnosed for being on the autistic spectrum, and then she was kind of like, I think you have a lot of symptoms that might mean you're on the spectrum. And it's not really something I thought about my whole life because, I'm able to make friends, but even now I'm like, I tend to not want to have friends. And so I had to kind of like really sit with that and think about it and think about like, why, there's a lot of, I get, so I started to look up some of the symptoms of being on the spectrum, and I started to realize, because sometimes I have thoughts and ways I go about things that I think are totally normal, but when I relate them to other people, they're like, no, dude, what are you talking about? It's like even things like this bike channel, like the genesis of this bike channel is I just get super geeked out on bikes. Like any of my interests, I just get just hyper geeked out and just dorked out. And you start to talk to people and you're like, well, what millimeters are your tires? And then they'll look at me like, what are you talking about? Like, millimeters of my tires? I just ride, and I've said that before in my videos, but it's like, there's just I'm kind of obsessive. Like every piece of my bike, I have to know what it is about it. Like if you look at this Poseidon that I'm riding around, everything about it has been customized, and I will sit there for hours on the internet figuring out what the best solution is for my bike, which I realize for a lot of people is not normal. It's like, I would always think like, why wouldn't you, laboriously like research your bike? Cause that'll bring you the most comfort, right? Like if you research all the parts of your bike, but it, it gets to the point where I need to know about the spokes. I need to know about the nipples of the spokes. I need to know about the hubs that I use. I need to know about the tires that I use. I need to know about the grips that I use. I need to know about the handlebar. I need to know about the seat post. I need to know about the seat. And I thought that was just normal. Like, why wouldn't you look into that? But most people just don't. They want a bike and they want to ride it, and they'll suffer through any discomfort. And I'm like, well, if you slavishly research, what issues you have on your bike, you can solve those problems. But I just think that level of detail and kind of I don't know if you call it obsessive, but it's intense. Like, and I start to realize the more I talk to people, it's intense to the point where I have to like, there's no way I could talk about bikes to people, right? This is why I make the channel, because I'm like trying to find people who are that obsessive as me. The best way is to go on the internet. But if I talk to just the average person, it's going to be way too much for them, and I'm going to bore them very quickly. So I always find myself, I'm the kind of person that's like, I don't really want to talk. I don't really want to talk to people. I don't really care if I have friends or not. But if you start talking about something that I'm geeked out on, I won't shut up. Like, right. If you talk about like the millimeter width of tires, I'll go on all day. But if we're just talking small talk, I just don't feel compelled to say anything. And again, I just didn't realize that these couldn't be symptoms of, being on the spectrum. I just didn't think about it. I just was like, isn't everyone like this? And so, my partner made me kind of realize that, like, yeah, that's kind of tends to be how you are. It's like you don't really want to talk to people or do small talk, but if they talk about their interests and you have aligning interests, you'll just keep going on and on. And so it's gotten me to look for evaluations and kind of get some therapy to see if that is a part of some of the things that I'm facing. I tend to, it's hard because I think, more research I do, I've been masking kind of my symptoms because I was a theater arts major. I'm like, well, I'm creative. I know how people's emotions are. I know how to make friends, which I do. But at the end of the day, I tend to be alone a lot, and I don't mind it. I don't feel lonely when I'm alone because I don't stop thinking about things. I think about I think about anything, everything and anything, all my interests. I have so many interests. I like basketball, and then I got it stereotypical about it, right? I was like, well, I can't be like that because I like sports and it's like those things are superficial. They don't mean that you are or are not on the spectrum. I just think what it comes to is my comfortability for being alone, my intense, kind of interests. I get really intense about my interests to a point where it's like, yeah, you don't want to talk to people about them unless they have the same intensity of interest. But I can't talk to the average person. I know how to say things. I know how to say what's up. I know how to deal with social situations, but I would just rather not. Right. So I think the masking part and understanding, hey, it's cool. It's cool to say hello to people. It's cool. But I tend to not. I just don't care what people think about me in some ways. Like I don't care. Like I care about my interests. Like if someone, but then I realize like some of my air quote friends or whatever you want to call them, I don't know that they really like hanging out with me. They don't really check in on me so much. And I have to, which I don't know, part of me gets a little bit like, well, why doesn't anyone check on me? Why doesn't anyone want to hang out with me? But then another part of me is like, I don't really care, but I feel like I should care because because you just should, like. And so I tend to find that a lot of the people that I would call my friends, just dip out on me, and they don't tell me why. They don't give me a reason for why that is. And I've had to think about that. And I've had to think, well, is it because of the way that I am? Is it because of my inability to do small talk and my intensity over my interests? And I think that people need, and then I'm super direct. Like, I'm like, why don't you just say what you're feeling? And I just feel like there's this dance with adults. I work with kids, and I do really well with kids because kids tend to be super direct, even if they're kind of insulting. Like, if a kid thinks you smell, like they'll say, hey, why are you stinky? Or if I'm bald headed, they'll be like, Mr. Noble, you don't have any hair. Like, they're super direct, which tends to not bother me. Because I've worked with kids and I understand the, how kids operate. And so I don't really get offended by those things, but I'm definitely like, oh, that's direct. But even with that, I tend to prefer working with kids and not adults, because I just feel adults are always trying to impress you or, show you how awesome they are or like how cool I am, because I don't get angry at things. But I would rather people be upfront with their emotions. Hey, this thing bothers me. Hey, here's where we're at. And I realize, like, maybe because I can't read the subtle cues that people try to put forth, and that might be a symptom of it. It's just that I tend to be like, hey, just say the thing you need to say. And I'm really not bothered by telling people my upfront feelings. I don't really care. Like, I'm just going to say what I feel. And I think that is distasteful for a lot of people. And so that's why I've had to, the stopping of the cannabis regularly kind of made me have to analyze that a little bit more. It's like, these ways about me and the fact that no one really checks in on me very much is why I tend to think that, yeah, I might have some issues with being on the spectrum. And, and also just my mental health. I have depressive, episodes and stuff like that. And so, but I've never looked into my mental health. I didn't grow up in a family or anything that encouraged that, kind of how boomers can be about those kind of things. But I'm happy with my interests and to be alone. And so, I think just all of those things have caused me to start to reevaluate my life. And then ultimately, I've booked a therapy session and just kind of, I'm going to start that process. And so I realized, and when I talked to my partner, I was just getting super depressed. I was just getting really down on myself, because of, my, not having clients and everything like that. And she was just like, so I started trying to study, front end development. And she was just kind of like, why are you doing that? Like, you like making videos. You are starting to get better at videos. You built up, you got 400 subscribers. Hey, thank you for everyone who's subscribed to the channel, like and subscribe. She's like, you're starting to get all these followers from, you've been making videos for about 6 months. And you've gotten people to follow you. I have another channel that's got like 1,800 subscribers to do with my music for kids. Mr. Noble Music. And she's like, I think like if you just go in that direction, that's a better long-term situation for you. You need something to bring joy to your life. And if you're just constantly depressed, like what good is that? It's not like if you study computer programming, you're going to get a job tomorrow anyway. You're just as likely to do better with your videos, getting better at making videos than you are with that, because at least you like that. And so it's made me really force myself to just, get over my depression, start getting out on the bike. She's like, go ride your bike, go do your thing. Cause she knows that I'm not going to leave the house. Right. Like I don't have friends and I'm not really trying to make friends. I've grown up being like the guy with all these friends and everything, but I've realized I've had to mask who I was to get those friends. But I didn't know that I was doing that. But when I really deeply think about it, I'm like, none of these friends really care about the things that I care about in the way that I do, but I have to pretend I care about them. I've always had to watch their TV shows. I've had to talk about the TV shows that they watch, and I don't want to do all of those things. I don't find joy in those things. I find joy in like outdoor activities, adventures, things like that. And so I would tend to be more friends with someone who's like, hey, let's go on an adventure. We don't have to like, I like talking about life and I like talking about feelings and stuff like that, but we don't have to do small talk. We can just go on an adventure and talk about the adventure we're going on, and that's why I think if you've seen me ride with Uncle Dan, I think that's why that works for me is like, I haven't had, I'm always looking for strong male role models. I feel like I've had tons of positive female role models, but not as many male role models. And I tend to not, even though most of my subscribers are men on this channel, I tend to not like hanging out with men that much. Quite frankly, I think I'm very sensitive to homophobia, racism, misogyny, and I don't like engaging in those things, even for jokes. I don't really like joking. I guess you would say I have a very black and white view of social justice, and so I don't tend to like engaging in, and I have a lot of queer friends, and I would consider myself part of the queer community. And so I just don't like talking disparagingly about people because of their identities. It makes me very uncomfortable. Like my main thing is I don't like Nazis. I don't like racists. I don't like Nazis. But everything else, I don't care. I don't care if you're trans. I don't care if you're fat. I don't care if you're short. I don't care what color you are. I don't care if you have 3 eyeballs sticking out of your head. I just don't care about those things. But if you're like hateful and like aren't kind to children and say hateful things about people's identities, if you're mean to old people, if you're mean to animals for no reason, I tend to be like, F that person. Like, I don't want anything to do with you. And I think to have friends a lot of the time, you have to tolerate a lot of those things. And I'm just not good with that. I'm going to, and then I'm not very, I'm very literal. So when people try to joke about those things, I get super like, hey, this is what it is. And I think that can be like extreme for people. I think people like to make those type of jokes or, oh, I'm just being joking by the things I'm saying. And to me, I'm like, no, there's no reason to find pleasure from putting people down. And I think those kind of things, I feel like make me not get along, or people not want to get along with me, because I'm very kind of like I said, black and white about some certain things like that. And I'm not super fun to hang out with in those kind of ways. Like I realize if we're at a party and we're listening to music and we're dancing, and we're just having a grand old time, a gay old time, then like I'm fun. But if it's like, if we start to talk about serious stuff, then I'm just like, hey, I draw the line here. And like, if someone I feel is saying something racist to me, I'm going to be like very upfront and be like, that's racist. Go F yourself. I don't care. Like, I'm not going to try to build a bridge with that person. I'm just going to be like, hey, F off, please. Or like, you can be that way, just not around me. I'm not going to entertain it. And so for those reasons, I have family members that are into Trump and MAGA and stuff like that. And I'm just like, no, I'm just not into it. And, if you're that way, then I'm, go F yourself. Like, if you're watching this video and you're like, what's the problem? Being political? Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get super political and, on a bike channel, but when I'm talking about my mental health and what I'm trying, reevaluating my life, this is just kind of who I am. And so I've had to reckon with that and be like, okay, this is who I am. Like, how do we go from here? And I think, I think the therapy is going to be a way for me to kind of figure out how to proceed. I have to really evaluate, do I want friends? Do I not want friends? Whatever. And so whatever, all those have led me to go back to the basics and say, hey, just get on the bike and start riding again. That's been what has helped your life. I've never felt bad after going on a bike ride, or I've never felt bad after exercising or playing basketball or something like this. And so finding the motivation to ride again in the winter has been like, that's where it was. It's like, it gets colder, but I've lived here for over 15 years, so I know how to put on gear to make myself warm enough on my bike. But it's just that motivation to get out the door. And then you look back at what you used to do. I look at my Strava times and like, oh, I've been on these 3-hour rides, these 4-hour rides, and now like, what's the point of going on a half an hour ride? But it's like, no, that's very much the point. When you're building up your stamina, is you want to go on those short rides, and you want to go on those half an hour rides, and you want to go on those 40-minute rides, 10-minute rides, go to the market, because that's how you're going to build up your stamina. I was finding myself just getting winded on the bike again and everything like that. And I've just had to be like, okay, like, get over, and I don't want to say get over it, get over your depression, because I don't think that's a good thing to say to someone. But maybe, hey, find something that takes some, alleviates the pressure on you a little bit. And I feel like going out, I love the Pacific Northwest. As you can see, like this beautiful overcast sky as I'm riding towards downtown. It's beautiful to me. And like every time I go out, you see the water, you see the boats on the water, the planes that land on the water, things like that. There's just so much beauty in this city. And it's the reason why I moved here. It just kind of has this melancholic grayness to it that's also beautiful. It's kind of like a Smashing Pumpkins song or something like that, And so, it's just forced me to get back out on there. And it's like, for anybody looking for the motivation to build up their stamina. I mean, I made a video about how to build up your stamina, but which is good because I ended up just saying, hey, remember what you said, and taking my own advice. But really, one of the things is just getting out there, even if it's a little bit per day, finding routes that are like half-hour routes, 15-minute routes that just force you to get on the bike, get out there, and get to the point where you have to do a little bike maintenance. You have to kind of clean your chain or whatever, put air in your tires, and get into the routine of riding again, because there's a lot of little things, like making sure your tire pressure is high, making sure you have the right gear, making sure if you need a lock or something like that, that over time, all of those things are stamina, like building the stamina to get ready to go out the door. We know, if anybody who knows, if you're riding in the wintertime, it's like, okay, checklist. I got my gloves, I got my layers so that I can appropriately delayer once I start to get hot. I tend to ride really hot on my bike, so it's really important to me to make sure my layer game is on point, so that when I start to overheat, and sometimes it's really hard to gauge like how cold it is versus how much gear you need. And so I'm riding the Poseidon today in this video. So this one I can ride with a pannier, so it's not as big a deal if I overdress. I can just take off a little piece of clothing and put it in the pannier. But so that's kind of a good bike to get out on in the winter to kind of gauge, okay, like, can I survive with less clothing for when I ride the Vasari or something where I don't have much a pannier or anywhere, and I don't like riding with a backpack. So if I'm on the Vasari or the Poseidon Triton, I'm like, you need to have the right gear on so that I don't need to put anything away, because I'm not wearing a backpack. It's just way too sweaty. And so, yeah, so I think for anyone trying to find the motivation to get back out there is just take those short rides. You know, if you need to avoid hills at first, I mean, I'm a hill demon, but I was like, you know, you don't have to go up the craziest hills right now. Just get out there and ride and get outside. And I think, especially in the Pacific Northwest, one thing I learned is like, you need to build the stamina for going outside. Like if you just stay in all the time, you can get so used to it. And, you know, I started to gain weight. Like one of the things I really wanted to do is I was reaching 250 pounds. And, you know, after riding for a year, I weighed in at like 216, which I thought was awesome. This is great. I feel better, sure. The way you look, I look a little bit leaner and stuff like that. But, you know, I think I wear 250 well, to where it doesn't come off as noticeably. But like the way that I felt was really crappy. Like it was hard for me to get up the stairs, hard for me to bend over. You know, I have a 2-year-old kid, like picking them up, and the way my joints felt and everything. And so my overall physical well-being, the way I feel, has been way better. Like my stamina has been way better. You know, as a self-employed person, I have to have a ton of stamina to like have the discipline to sit in front of my computer and without anybody making me. I'm like, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get more clients. And so things like that, the stamina of that, having family duties, having to prepare dinner, having to get my kid ready for bedtime, having to spend time with my kid and my partner, you know, having to take him to school, pick him up. And so those kind of things have, improved. Like I'd say, because my stamina has improved, just the overall well-being that I feel from riding. And I mean, even now where I was just sitting in a pit of depression because of what had happened to me professionally, you know, after riding the bike and stuff, I just feel an overall sense of well-being. Hey, it's going to be all right. You're in a tough spot now, but nothing lasts forever. And then just giving yourself the positive talk that you need to get through things, right? I've noticed over the years, like, because of my mental health, like I've had to come up with some certain tactics just to kind of survive, you know, myself. And so one of the things was like, I really try to put a shutdown to negative self-talk. I was like, you can't bash yourself. There's no benefit to just going super hard and saying, oh, you're a piece of crap, you suck, your life sucks, everything about you sucks. It's like, even if you feel that way, you kind of have to talk in a way that like, hey, it's going to be all right. There's good times and bad times in life. You can't look at the bad times and say that this is your whole life, you know what I mean? So it's been things like that where, I've just had to kind of go through that process and make sure that over time, I'm feeding myself positive talk, because I mean, there's really no way to get out of the house and get on your bike and get out of your problems if you are just constantly being down on yourself. So, you know, so I just wanted to tell folks, hey, you know, keep pedaling, take short rides. If, whatever you used to do, if you used to go on these epic rides and everything, you know, you're going to ride them again, right? But the first step is to just get out there and go to the grocery store, go around the block. You know, even that, like, it helps, you know what I mean? So if you're finding you lack motivation in the winter, or you lack motivation for some emotional reasons, just know that riding your bike usually helps, right? It rarely hurts. You rarely ride a bike when you're feeling bad and be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And so I just think, I just wanted to let my players know that that's part of the reason why I've not been posting as frequently, is just I've been going through, rough times mentally, but I feel like I'm at a point where I can feel positive about the future, even though things aren't where I want them to be. And I feel like the writing has helped, and the responses that I get from y'all online. One of my homies was like, in the comments section, hey, you're back. And it just kind of makes me feel like this is a place where I get positive feedback and positive reinforcement. And I wanted to really thank y'all for that, and know that, like, because I don't take it personally. I always want people to get into the comment section and give their opinion. Now, the goal of this channel is to help people with their cycling journey and to realize that everybody's journey is a bit different. So I always encourage people, like, if you disagree with me, tell me why. Like, I'd rather engage in why someone sees something the way they do than just blanketly saying, hey, this is better or worse, or this sucks or it doesn't, because I just don't think that's helpful for people. If I had one person in the comment section be like, one buy is a downgrade, and I'm like, or it's a step backwards or something, and I'm like, that doesn't really help anyone, because some people might like a one buy more based on what they need. So if you feel that way, just say why. Like, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's hard to dispute that or really get any meaning from that. So I felt like, if you are getting in the comment section, just the whole goal of the channel is to help people find their bike build, like what makes cycling cool to them. And so when you have detailed responses, and credit to the people who 99% of the people who get in my comment section give good reasons and feel like this is a platform where they can like dork out and really say why they prefer something. Especially when I made the video about square taper bottom brackets, I felt like that was one of my favorite ones in terms of people really giving their reasons, giving products they liked, things like that. That's just where it's at for me. So, if you're watching, if you're new, leave me a comment, say what's up, talk about your struggles if you've had any, and just know that, when you do comment, I like to use the comment section to make other videos where people are giving me their opinions. And so that's where it's at. I'm just going to keep trying my best to make videos as often as I can. And, I'm going to try to keep it as much as I can on the aspects of riding bikes, but, I might sometimes get into the emotional side of riding. And, I think the things that I've talked about are relatable to the motivation to get out on the bike. So, my issues with cannabis, or whether you want to call them issues or not, mental health, all of those things, they all play a part in who I am and me coming to terms with that and trying to get back out on the bike, because it's one of the things that brings me joy. So get in the comment section if you've had issues or struggles or anything like that, or you need someone to affirm you and say, hey, it's going to be all right. That's what I'm really here for. Ultimately, is life is short, and you really should spend as much of it as you can trying to find as much joy as you possibly can, because what's the point? Someone has been depressed. What's the point of that? So, my lovers, thank you so much for anybody who listened to this video. And again, thank you even much more if you've left a comment. Please subscribe or like or what, any of those things that help me reach my dream one day of just being able to talk about bikes and test gear and ride around, because that's all I want to really do. If I could, is just make videos. So thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. I'll be really try to get these videos cranking out as much as I possibly can. All right. Thank you, my love.